Yes.
Sure. I wanted to ask you again about WOW, what happened at WOW in South Sudan. Now the government has held a press conference saying 43 people were killed. As I'd asked you, I think on Monday, the opposition has said used numbers as high as 400. What is the UN's between these two competing claims? One, what is the UN doing in terms of the gates, and also what primarily what does it say is the number of people that were killed?
Well, we at this stage do not have a reliable number of people who were killed. And the reason why that is because of access restrictions. We, at this point, are trying to get our personnel to as many places as we can. We have been doing active patrolling where we can in WOW. But in terms of getting the factual data of casualties, we would need to have better access than we currently have. And we have been pleading for sufficient access. But at this stage, we simply don't have a way of having that count. And regarding protection of civilians, we are protecting civilians, but it's not at the UN base itself. Like I've said over the past days, we've established an adjacent site where there are people, basically 12,000 people are being cared for.
But I guess my question is, if this is one of the countries in which the UN has a pretty large peacekeeping mission and a human rights component, how can it be that the UN is allowing these two very divergent numbers to exist? Is the UN going to come out with a number, or is it just an attempt to not provide a number?
We would like to be able to get the information about exactly what's going on the ground in a sufficient way, but for that we need access. This is a problem that we faced in many different circumstances. If the parties on the ground do not allow access, we can't go about our work. We need to go about it, but they in turn need to provide the access.
Security Council election. One, just I guess factually and observation-wise, I saw after the ambassadors of Italy and Netherlands were in the PGA's office, Moses Abelian of DGACM go in. So I wanted to know, was this based on a request? Maybe you can find out, a request by the two countries or a request by the PGA, and was it to provide the kind of precedents that you gave? And as to the precedents, this is what maybe I'll answer. It seems like in all the previous cases, these were two different regional groups, or it was prior to the existence of regional groups. So the question becomes, like in this case, they said yesterday they're going to consult with each other, even not during their year, i.e. Italy consulting with Netherlands during its first year, Netherlands with Italy. So it's kind of this didn't take place in the past. And the question is, does that comply with?
That has also taken place in the past. If you remember a few years ago, there were two different two-year terms for Argentina and Brazil where they agreed with each other that they would consult with each other so that they had a certain amount of information sharing between the Argentine delegation for its two-year term and Brazil for its two-year term. That was just a few years ago.
So what if somebody doesn't agree? What if the non-sitting party doesn't agree to a press statement? So how does that work?
I'm not here to prejudge what the agreement is that they will reach. That's for the parties themselves to do. What I'm just pointing out is the previous record of precedence.
Right. And then Mr. Abelian, was this to provide legal advice or not?
That ultimately, it's not for me to comment. He's there as the head of the division, the department that deals with General Assembly affairs and conference management. He's supposed to be there for events that involve the General Assembly, and this is a General Assembly event. The election of Security Council members is held in the General Assembly. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. On Burundi, I just wanted to know if you have anything on Mugamba. This was the place where the president had said disarmament was required or there would be a crackdown, and now there are reports that there is, in fact, a crackdown, fighting and a number of people dead. And I wanted to know, since especially the UN sort of had advance notice that this would take place, given the threat, is the UN present in any way? Does it have any estimate of casualties? What's going on?
Well, we've made our concerns known about Burundi, and including about Mugamba in past weeks. So I'd refer you back to that. If there's anything further to say at this point, I'll check and see whether there's anything.
And Monday down in federal court, there was a hearing for Mr. Englap Sang in the ongoing case, and Assistant District Attorney Richenthal basically widened the case and said they're going to be there's more things they're looking at as to Englap Sang, and he also described in more detail a, quote, conduit of bribery taking place within the UN. And I wanted to know, since you've said you're monitoring it, what is the UN's response to the new information that was presented on Monday?
Yeah, we are aware of the latest information, and as I pointed out, the situation of South News is under review. It continues to be under review, but certainly any new information is useful in light of that. And with that, let me go to our guest. Wait right here, and I'm going to be right back. Did everyone leave except for you and Carmen Mare tonight? There's like 3 people in the room. Where'd the rest go?
They thought that de Mistura would start, or they...
No. He's not starting yet. Hold on 1 second. Let me get them to squawk. Mr. de Mistura probably doesn't brief until about 1, so we've got time. 1 sec. 1 second. I'll be right back. No. Stay. We're going to try and start soon. We'll swap 1 more time so people come back.
Now call on the International Lawyers Organization.
Vice President, the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action was adopted under the auspice of the United Nations. It led to the creation of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the focal points of human rights within the UN, and set the United Nations at the center of the global human rights movement. At times of today, many believe that the United Nations itself should set the example for the rest of the world. Too often, however, we have seen that this is not the case. It is with regret and concern that we must request the Council's attention for a matter of interference of the right to freedom of expression of a journalist at the UN in New York by the office of the UN most senior official. After covering the UN for more than a decade, on 19 February 2016, Inner City Press was ordered to leave the UN premises on 2 hours' notice in a letter signed by UN Under Secretary General for Public Information. The official reason given was that the journalist covered a private meeting. This meeting was held in the UN press briefing room, to which all press is ordinarily allowed, and the journalist immediately left the room when asked to do so by UN security. Moreover, the apparent harassment of Inner City Press appears to have commenced after it began covering a story concerning corruption linked to the office of the UN Secretary General. While the story has been widely covered, it was Inner City Press that repeatedly asked pointing questions about it at UN press conferences given by the spokesperson of the Secretary General. The timing of the first expelling of the Inner City Press journalist from the UN, then the closing of his office at the time the story was being covered, after more than a decade of covering the UN, at best seems suspicious and at worst a blatant interference with the human right to freedom of expression by a body who should know better and set a better example. We call on the High Commission for Human Rights, who is itself an Under-Secretary General, to inquire into this matter and to report the findings to this Council at its next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.